Welcome to the Ask Me How I Know podcast, the only podcast in the multifamily niche replicating what takes place outside the walls of a seminar. This is like the lobby, where honest, unscripted conversations take place and transformation happens. We'll talk about practical problem solving in the multifamily niche, as well as overcoming limiting beliefs. Thank you for joining us today, and now for our featured guest. Hey, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. Today is going to be an extraordinary day because we're going to pair up growth mindset as well as actions as well as experience. Today is like a full circle kind of day, and I have a really fantastic guest that I've had the luxury of getting to know particularly well over COVID. We got to know each other before that, but then we've been on all these little group things through quarantine, and it's been really phenomenal. So thank you, Noel, for joining us today on Ask Me How I
Absolutely.
Know.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really great. Noel, do you mind if I tell my embarrassing foot in the mouth story?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I always, not always, but I sometimes have these really embarrassing stories, and maybe they're encouraging to other people to just press on. But I put out in the group hey, I'm looking for guests to be on Ask Me How I Know. If you're interested, message me. And Noel was really kind, and he messaged me, and he has this fantastic Facebook profile pic of he and his beautiful wife, right? And so this entire time, I've been thinking he's Noel. And I'm talking to this girl, and he responds, and I'm super excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm gonna have this, you'll be the first woman on my podcast. I'm really excited to share space with you, blah, blah, blah. What do you remember your response?
Not word for word, but something to the effect of not to embarrass you, but I am a man.
So the fun part is that one, you are one of the most gracious people. I truly, no, you're one of just a very gracious gentleman. And so
Thank you.
the other part that I was excited about is that my maiden name, my former name is Walton. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Noel Walton, and Noel is a name that we were going to name our daughter and things like that. And so it's all these cool connections. I'm like, this is so cool. This is going to be my new BFF in multifamily. And yeah, and then that happened. But I'm kind of telling this embarrassing story because I don't mind throwing myself under the bus to help others, because you know what, we all put our foot in our mouth at some point. And if you're not putting your foot in your mouth, then you're not doing enough. You just need to get out there more. And so don't be afraid of putting your foot in the mouth. And if the person is someone that you really need to get to know and connect paths and things like that, they're going to be gracious. If the person is, aggravated by you and things like that, maybe not someone like Noel here that you want to get to know a little bit better. So put yourself out there, people. And then be a Noel. Seriously, I really appreciated that. I showed it to my husband, and I was like, this is a cool person. Yeah.
Thank you.
Man, well, we were talking about how important it is to consider all the steps that make a person successful. And a lot of times on podcasts, we will hear how how somebody actually got there, and we'll hear oh my gosh, here's my guest, and they have 50 million doors, and they did it by burning the boats and and just jumping in. And 6 months later, a lot of times the stories that we hear aren't reality. And Noel is very successful at everything that he does. And I asked him if he would kind of share some of the building blocks because it's not just multifamily that's going to get you to where you need to be. It's the choices you're making right now, with your family, with your W-2, it's how you approach life. And Noel, you've had a fantastic approach to life, and you've done so much growing as a person. So what did that start out as when you were a kid? How have you shifted over the decades in your thinking?
Oh, it's been a interesting change. So I grew up in Alabama, and very strict religious family, but not necessarily always a bad thing, but in some cases it could be taken a bit far, which it was. But uh, it created I think a sense of fear as a child. I grew up with the fixed mindset that you have to just go on about life, be content with what you have. That the self-limiting beliefs of if you don't already have some apparent talent for something, that you can't be good at it, or some people are just born with certain talents, or are born into money and things like that. So you get those limiting beliefs you grow up with. Yeah, I think fear was one of the biggest ones for me growing up. Is I was scared of a lot of things. I was interested in doing certain things, but maybe didn't pull the trigger on certain dreams that I had as a child and as a teenager. That looking back, I do regret some, that like, hey, I could have done this and been so much better in this area of my life or whatever. But I tried to focus, now trying to leave behind the negative thoughts, and the regrets, and just think of, hey, what have I done well, and what can I continue to do well, and what areas do I want to keep improving in, and how do I do that? And from that point, I think a lot of my background has caused me and driven me to be more empathetic toward people now, and I love to connect with people. I love to hear their stories. I love to offer value where I can. Um, just to be a sounding board, things like that. To me, that energizes me. I love it. I love connecting. Making friends. It's to me, that just that human connection is what drives me. Definitely.
You're
Um,
really you're very good at it as well. I will
oh,
attest to
thank you.
that. Like your sincerity comes through, and as I know that you've been meeting so many different people and intentionally, but some people you can tell that they just want to get to know another person to just go, okay, that's who it is, and that's how I can partner, or that's how we could do this, which isn't wrong. But then you come across people like you who you're like, well, all of those things, but how about you as a person? So
Yeah.
sincerity
Yeah.
comes out. You could definitely see like to do that.
Oh,
So
thank you.
when you think about fear, what pushed you over the edge? I too, as a child growing up, like was just wrapped in fear for similar reasons, even. And so, what is it that was a catalyst to push you beyond? Like, wait a second, maybe I can do this, and how did you overcome fear?
So as far as specifically to investing in that mindset, it's actually been an interesting long road. When I first joined the military, and I was 19 years old, this was around 2000. I was working long 12-hour shifts, doing pulling security for aircraft, and we had a TV on in the midnight shifts, and there was these late night TV commercials for a man named Carleton Sheets. Some of the old timers will know the name, but uh, it was one of the first real estate investing training packages, that one of the first, at least, that I knew of at that time. And I was definitely interested. Like it piqued the interest to know like the concept of investing, and being able to take money and make more money with it, and build a life of freedom. So I being 19 years old, I think I spent $200 on a cassette tape series and books, and I went
Wow,
through and
that's a
started
lot back
learning.
then
Yeah,
for cassettes.
especially as a 19-year-old with a small, probably E3, E4 paycheck. It's a big chunk of money, but I wanted to learn more. I started learning more, but what kept me at that point was still fear. I didn't have the mindset. I started digging in, but it was always the self-limiting beliefs of, how do I do this with unknowns, and and I think enough of that just caused my efforts to fizzle out, and for a few years. And as life, in the military and career keep moving, and when I went to college around 2008, I worked part-time for a gentleman who was into flipping, and this was right at the crash. He was buying houses cash for, I mean, just insanely cheap amounts, 10, 15, $20,000 houses, flipping these things. And I was the $8 an hour worker going in there and pulling carpets and doing all these random jobs for him, which, as I learned what he was doing, I was like, okay, I like this. This is a cool model, and he was putting renters in some, he was flipping some. And, he had me working in the office a couple days a week, and I would input, some of the rent checks into his spreadsheets and keep up with his accounts. And then I noticed total income for the month, $25,000. And I was like, wow, this is something I need to learn about. And, it just keeps, turns that machine back on in my mind, and like keeps the wheels going. And I was still driven toward it, but still my life was still focused on college, finishing college, getting the military career started in the Army. And, finally, what really the first what got us moving. My wife and I got married in 2012, and we were first stationed in Hawaii. And we really, that's where we found bigger pockets, and we started really just educating ourselves several hours a week into books and podcasts. And we used our VA loan and no money down, and we bought a short sale house there. And it was it was a live-in flip, and we lived in it for 3 years. And due to the appreciation there in Hawaii, we came out very well. I came out with some good capital, and we brought that with us to our next duty station in Alabama, and that's where we got more active. And we connected with my old real estate agent that was there, who was also an investor. And with that partnership that we built, and that connection, that relationship that I'd had with her for the previous few years, we started scouring the MLS and really started pulling up. It was a good time for deals off the MLS. We were getting VA foreclosures, and we started flipping some of those and rehab. And we still have one that we rent out. It does really well. And that's really where we got past that initial fear and just said, we got to do this. We just have to do it. And it was scary. The first one we went in $30,000 cash, and it was that was a scary moment. Like, what if we lose all this? And but we've almost made back everything we put into it, including rehab costs now, and it still continues to rent very well. And best decision, we found that as we made the decisions to push past fear, that the rewards have always been just far exceeded everything we expected.
Oh, seriously. That is fantastic. I'm thinking about those people. I know when my husband and I passively invested the first time, like wiring a chunk of money, it's like, there are a couple of things that'll make kind of take your breath away. One of them is you say "I do" at the altar when you have your first kid, and when you wire a large sum of money or invest it, right? Like,
Oh yes.
okay.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
for us, we were confident in what we were investing in. So we had some things that kind of coddled us in our fear. What is something that helped, you and your lovely wife, Claudia, kind of say, okay, we're going to put this chunk of money into this, even though we're afraid?
Um, well, we knew really it was the education. We had spent the time, we had probably overspent our time in analysis paralysis throughout the years. And since 2012, we continue to learn and learn and learn and just soak everything in. But it took us that long till 2017 to take action on it. 5 years of just educating ourselves before we actively just did something. And looking back, it's like we just kick ourselves. Like, could have done something sooner, but we finally did, and
Yeah.
and now, that's one of our life lessons is just don't get stuck. Don't allow yourself to get stuck. Just cover your bases, be cautious, know what you're doing. When you got your bases, look, call an expert, call a mentor. Hey, what do you think of these numbers? And when you have given it sufficient thought, then if it works, do it. And that's really where we're at. Is just that's one of, I think, the really hardest things right there is just getting past your mind wanting to stop itself, stop you from uh, things that from the unknown. That's really is the fear of the unknown. And But I think that's really what has got us now is we know the concepts we need to know. We have educated ourselves, and we just need to trust our knowledge and take action.
It can be so difficult to trust yourself, but we always hear about the law of the first deal, and I mean, you're attesting to that as well. And it's so easy to just kind of sit back and not have that self confidence, because you can't have confidence until you have some success, but you can't have success until you actually overcome your fear. It's such a
Yeah,
chicken and
yeah.
egg situation. I've been thinking about this concept of the what if. I've been actually kind of thinking about fear the last few days in a general way, and how so often we're focused on what if it fails? What will I lose? But we forget to say the reverse and say, what if I win and I don't take that step right now, but I would be really successful at it? What am I going to lose in the positive way? So
Hmm.
it can go either way, but unfortunately, I think our minds are wired to look at it in the negative way instead of, wait, what am I going to lose out on if I don't take this step?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's
Definitely think you're correct there. It's
it's crazy.
yeah.
Well, and you and your wife, Claudia, are partnered together in this, and there are a growing number of husbands and wives linking arms, and partnerships, that they're moving forward together in this. And for Steve and I, there have been some challenges and some rubs, along the way that we've grown through. Would you be willing to give some advice or an experience that you've had that's helped, you and your wife?
Yeah, we've definitely learned a lot about how to work together, and just knowing, identifying, and who's got strengths in what areas, and using those strengths to make the best choices, and how to run your business and everything. So that for me, it's obviously I love being the people person. I love being the trigger puller. Being a skydiver now, to me, like stepping out the door is something I love. And I'm getting past. The fear is less of a hindrance to me as it is a driver to me now. That because I know the initial fear is going to bring something great. And that's the way I try to frame it. Is that I think of it as stepping out the door, and then it's just bliss.
You
And
flipped your mindset.
uh,
You really did
yes,
do a flip.
exactly. Yes, and where and using that same mindset and how I think during skydiving has also brought me into to frame life in that way. And it's what is my at the door moment? What could be the, oh man, I'm too scared to do this, versus, oh, this is going to be awesome when I get out there.
Yeah.
And it's just that yeah, that shift in mindset. And but it's like I said, bringing it back, sorry, I'm
You're fine. This is a
the
conversation.
strengths. Yeah,
You're
yeah,
totally fine.
knowing our strengths. So Claudia's definitely the analytical, and she's better than I am with numbers. I feel pretty solid with numbers being a pilot, but her strength in as far as the two of us, yeah, she the financial side. She grew up in an entrepreneur family, so she's got very good business sense. So I default to her thinking on a lot of the detailed oriented pieces of finances and things like that. And I think together we merge those really well. I guess the next thing to figure out, we're still balancing out, is we always want to talk about business all the time. It's always the business or the kids. So now just you got to be able to work balance in there of when do we make time for just us, and make it just about husband and wife, and get a babysitter and go out to a date and try not to talk about business too much. But it's hard because we love it, and it's something that excites us. And but that's kind of my take on it as far as building that partnership with your spouse.
It's really interesting. I grew up in a real estate family. They were residential, and my grandpa retired at 91, and he was training agents at a Century 21 office. All this to say, I mean, real estate was always a conversation around the family. You'd always be catching it between somebody because everyone's involved in some way. And when you do something, the old adage, if you're doing something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And sometimes I kind of bring that into, if Steve and I are talking a lot of business, some of that is just fun. And it's actually, I think for you, it's well, maybe like it's part of what's going to expand our dreams for our life and everything.
Hmm.
And so it is hard to separate the two. Like, are we talking about business or are we talking about things that we love?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's yeah, for us it's about life. I know, just having grown up with that fixed mindset, I know a lot of people that still hold that mindset and they think of money as the love of money is the root of all evil, and it's just greedy. You need to be content and things like that. And you have to step back and look at the big picture. This is not about the money. It's not about having a nice fancy car to show off or a nice fancy house to show off. It's about having the means to create the life that you want and have the freedom to do that, to travel, to learn, to just experience, to be able to see people you know and love, hopefully when travel restrictions are not in place,
It's rough for
be
those
able
of
to
us who
spend
like to
that
travel
time.
right now.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm hoping that changes soon. But that's something that's part of our why, is that we want to create an amazing life for our two daughters, and to be able to create the life that we want based off our goals. We know we need to focus into certain areas of multifamily real estate and make those our efforts. And that's ultimately where it comes down to, is determining your why and how to accomplish that.
Yeah, at some point, dreams do have to be funded.
Mhm, exactly.
They don't just happen and everything. That's interesting. I just mentioned I was out mountain biking with my buddies. We've started our mountain bike season. He was asking me about multifamily, and I said, here's the thing. Like I used to have this little interesting relationship with money, and I think a lot of people have to address their relationship with money and determine where it's at. And so I had a similar mindset of, well, I don't have to have this more. I didn't hate it, but it was like, I don't have to have a lot of money. And then I had a lot of people that were well to do come into my life over the years while I was still growing up. And I saw what they did with their money. And I saw the powerful good that they did with their money. I saw how they opened up their beautiful properties to ginormous gatherings of people and different things. So I really had this different experience, but I had to share that and expand my husband's thinking on that, because he was very much like raised in a way where, people who are wealthy probably aren't very good people. And
Hmm.
there are stereotypes that we give people. But as we were talking about this, I said, hey, you know what? Here's the deal. The more money I have, the more good I can do in the world.
Yeah,
Money is something that can be
absolutely.
leveraged for something really great, including, funding the dreams of our family.
Yes, absolutely. That's part of it. It's, we need to be able to give value back to the world around us, and to have ways to better other people's lives around us.
Yeah. You've had a couple of horror stories or learning, maybe not horror stories, but you've had some learning experiences also along the way. Is there one that stands out that you're like, oh my gosh, don't ever do this. Ask me how I know.
Yeah, we've had definitely some learning experiences, and otherwise known as seminars,
Right.
as Rod often says. Yeah, during our time, when we were in Alabama and we were flipping some of these houses, obviously it's a people business, so you're dealing with contractors, you're dealing with property management, things like that, and uh, yeah, the first time we ran into one of the main issues we ran into with a property, it was going to be a good flip. We got it under contract. We went up to closing, and we had we're still waiting on the appraisal report, but it hadn't come back in yet, and we were a couple days out from closing.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
property was uh, advertised at 1,800 square feet, and it's a 3-2 with a garage, standard single family, and it didn't really click to us. Like, the inside looks a little smaller than 1,800 square feet. It just wasn't. So yeah, it wasn't until literally the day of closing, after we closed, we got the appraisal report back in that
After you closed?
after we closed, which was a big mistake. But yeah, we found out that the previous owner, or some previous owner, had listed the square footage with the county as 1,800 square feet, counting the garage space, and
Oh,
not just the living area.
okay.
So apparently that is allowed in some places in Alabama, that an owner can declare, this is my square footage, and it just goes in the
Wow.
record. I don't know how that happened, but regardless, we learned a good lesson that day on due diligence. So, uh, which then forced us to then have to pivot based off of this new knowledge, because when we ran our numbers off 1,300 square feet, we would basically be close to just breaking even versus profiting off this one.
Wow.
So with a little bit of business meeting with Claudia and I, sat down together, we talked it over, and we realized that a lot of houses in the area are converting their garages into living space. So we did the numbers on that. We realized we'd be able to build up the garage into a large living room, or man cave, something of that nature, and build it out with insulation, carpet, um, put a back wall in with a closet, with a laundry room on one side, and we were able to do that for just under, I think, under 5,000. Which then, obviously, at that point, we added in ducting for the AC, and ceiling fan, made it a completely livable space, knocked out the garage door, put a new wall in with windows, everything. So at that point, we were able to actually make it 1,800 square feet. And yeah, we were able to walk away with still a reasonable profit off of that flip. So yeah, we were scared for the first couple of days, but like you said, we didn't let the fear uh, control us. It was, okay, so what do we do now? What's our plan based off of this new information? How do we, it's a wall in front of us. How do we go around it, over it, through it? We got, there's a way to do this. And we just put our heads together and made a plan, and it worked out great.
It life requires that, but especially investing in any part of in the real estate niche. I mean, you have to get some super creative thinking sometimes, because things like this happen. It's reality. And if it hasn't happened to somebody, it's going to happen. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm just saying, hey, life happens to the best of us, and knowing how to have that, that's part of that character, like who we are as people is so important. And like you're saying, could you imagine if that happened to you, like say at 2006 or something, like with where your thinking was then, it, I don't know, sometimes that really will implode somebody. So it really attests to where you've
Yeah.
come as a
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah, absolutely. And situations like that can cause people to just turn around and leave their dreams up altogether, which is, you got to just keep going after it, and
Yeah.
uh, stay in the game.
Keep your head in the game. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow. No, I've really enjoyed spending time with you. Do you have any parting words of wisdom that you would say, you know what? I wish I would have known, or I think people should know, or this was really helpful. This is your opportunity to drop a couple of golden gems.
All right.
I'm a girl. I could say it could be glitter, but you're a dude, so I want to drop the glitter.
So no, really, I think it all comes down to being able to assess yourself and identify your fears, identify your self-limiting beliefs, really get a full picture of how you think and how you decide, how you move through life, and figure out where you want to be, what's keeping you from getting there, and how do you remove those obstacles or get around them. And it comes down to developing the mindset. It really does. And I obviously I'm still working on it. I don't claim to be amazing at that. It's still always growth, and I think that that's the best place to start is with yourself. And as you get better at that with yourself, it's going to reflect in every area of your life that you move into, whether it be real estate or any other type of investing or reaching your goals in any area. It's going to take you knowing what your obstacles are, what is your plan to get through them, have an alternate course of action, things like that. So ultimately, yeah, you just got to take action and get past the fear.
Definitely. I to piggyback on that, I'd also say, like, I think my growth started happening. I think I can go to the moment where I actually started growing is when I did what Adrian says is like punch fear in the face. I just like kind of grabbed everything that I was afraid of and I looked at it and I was like, I'm tired of being owned by this and I'm
Hmm.
going to actually look at it. And sometimes that meant, more often than not, it meant actually having to look at myself in a really realistic way and accept some shortcomings and then also accept, hey, I was not I was always supposed to be so modest and humble that I couldn't receive that I was actually good at something. So it
Hmm.
was both. It was like, hey, this is a shortcoming, not everything is, here's your strength. And being able to really like look at a situation, the world, a property, whatever it is, but including ourselves, like just look at the world realistically.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Wow.
good stuff.
Yeah, it is really good stuff. There was something else I was gonna ask you, and it something that you said that it made my mind kind of go down a rabbit trail, and so I think I was gonna piggyback. You were talking about jumping out of skydiving, which I think everybody needs to go skydiving because it's so fun.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
I love.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
no, I agree with you. That's the one thing I tell everyone. You got to do it once in your life. Just experience it once.
Yeah,
And
at
some
least.
of us just get addicted to it.
Oh, I think I could easily have an addiction to it. I look forward to doing that with my son someday, but I really encourage people to like find a hobby, an activity, or something that pushes you to your door. I'm going to use your skydiving. For it just pushes you to that door that forces you to have to jump off. For me, it's mountain biking. It used to be rock climbing, but it's like I took myself to that physical threshold where I just thought, oh my gosh, like what if I ride my bike down that? I don't know what's going to happen. What if I jump out the door? And the more you do that, actually, physically, it's amazing. It has this other effect on all areas of your life. Like, oh, I did that. Oh, I ran a half marathon just to do it, bucket list item, just to prove to myself because I wasn't a long distance runner. When I
Hmm.
did that, it did something to all of me. It's like, whoa, I accomplished that physically. I could sit around and figure anything out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And it's that whether, no matter what it is for each person, mine being skydiving is definitely changed my mindset. It's changed so much about how I approach life now. And and it's not just the adrenaline. It's not just the community, that's one of the best parts of skydiving to me is such great people. But it's that that I don't know, it's just a positivity about it, and there's such a great vibe that you pick up just from the community and the attitude of, you know, their fear is not going to control me. I'm going to get out there, I'm going to enjoy this, and we're going to be, high fiving all day over this. It's such a great sport. And it's and everybody needs to find that what works for them for sure. Find what amps you up and just go after it.
Yeah. Oh man, totally. I have one final thing. Usually I don't have finals, but but you are such an extraordinary networker, and you have such an extraordinary way of being around people, of connecting with people, and that doesn't come natural for everybody. So I'm just wondering if there's, I mean, it is who you are as a person and who you've grown into and everything. But do you have any suggestions for people that might be struggling with, growing their network and getting connected into community, be it multifamily community or any community?
I think you have to make yourself vulnerable. I think that's the holdup for a lot of people is there's this like nervousness. I don't want to bare myself for fear of embarrassment, or they may not accept me, or because I'm not I haven't done a bunch of deals yet, or I haven't I haven't flipped a house, or I haven't bought a multifamily. How are these people going to accept me that have hundreds and hundreds of doors, or thousands? How can I talk to them? What are they going to get from me? I think that's a lot of it, is how could I possibly bring value to these people? But and I had a lot of those thoughts at first. It was, I'm new to this, I'm just kind of soaking up information, what do I have to give? But you just have to get out there and just make the friendships, make the connections, really just talk to people, get to know their story. I've made it a point to add new friends every day on, whether it be a LinkedIn connection, a Facebook connection, send messages, set up Zoom calls, and as I've been trying to work out several of those a week where I have just a call is to say, hey, what do you do? What's your focus? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is there anything I can help you with? Here's where I'm at. Here's what I do. Here's where I'm located. All this, all these details. And if you just put yourself out there like that, that's where you find those opportunities. And you never know what you're going to find. Someone out there is going to be like, yeah, you're working in this market. And I've had several people like, oh, I would like to invest in Texas. Would you like to look at these deals with me? And we'll go through and analyze deals, and it just keeps adding and keeps stacking. And then as you meet some people here, you'll meet more people they know, or they'll meet more people. You start building those connections, and it just accelerates, and it's exciting.
I find it really exciting. Also, I had a couple of calls yesterday with people, and I have to admit, like a lot of this, quarantine, and you set such a good example of, connecting with other people. You made it a point to say, hey, Steve and Julie, let's connect up. Let's get on a Zoom call. And, and it might be nerve wracking. Obviously for me, I'm a people person, it's not, but for my husband, and he was already acquainted with you somewhat ish through my Siri our messages. And so he already knew that you were a great guy, but it was a matter, it's also not his comfort zone, but he's willing to step out. And as we had that Zoom call with you, I could see him just kind of like, oh, okay. So if you're lean more towards the introvert side, take a moment, just step to the edge of your plane door and just go for it, because you'll meet awesome people like Noel, and maybe me, maybe some other people, and you'll realize, like, especially if you come across the extroverts, we make it kind of easy for the introverts, to, hey, come on, we care about you. And that network definitely grows.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, definitely, it's your network is your net worth, like as the saying goes, and it's so true.
It is. And then you realize there's so many similarities. You're not alone. And that feeling of not being isolated or alone is really powerful as you're trying to move into unknown situations. And even if you're an experienced investor, growing that network is powerful because you have more people to link arms with. Super great.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very good.
Thank you so much for joining us on Ask Me How I Know. It's been an absolute honor to have you here. And I would like to say thank you. I think I cannot overthink those serving our country. And I really appreciate it's
My
not
pleasure.
you, but it's your family. You know, I always look at the entire family because they are giving as well. So thank you to you for physically and practically serving, and to your family for sharing you with our country.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I definitely would, anybody listening would, if anybody would like to connect, look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm on both, Noel Walton, and, working, we got websites as well. So it's eaglescapital-llc.com. But yeah, we want to connect, and definitely do that. Look forward to hearing from you.
Make sure that you go and check out Eagles Capital LLC. That's the website. Make sure you connect up with Noel Walton on all the social media platforms. Obviously, Facebook, LinkedIn are his preferred. No Instagram?
Not so much business, no, but a little more of my skydiving stuff on Instagram.
Oh, I might have to connect up there. But anyway, make sure you check out. I always say, if one of our guests resonates with you, you definitely want to go and check them out. You want to follow them because they're resonating with you for a reason, and that might be someone that you want to invest with. And so you're going to want to say, hey, what offerings do they have right now, or what's coming up? And building that relationship right now is really important, because when the opportunities come, then you already know you can trust them. So when you wire that money, you're not afraid. Anyhow, thank you once again, Noel. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. My guests are the most humble successes, so be sure to show them your appreciation by rating this episode 5 stars, which sounds silly, but let's be real. Ratings, likes, and shares, they take no time at all, but make all the difference in the world, if only to boost morale. Also, since I don't spend time on the how and why they got into investing, be sure to check out the show notes to get to know more about today's guests, including other podcasts they've been on that has a more traditional format that will give other details about their investment journey. It'll also tell you things like the most influential person in their life and what they're reading right now, as well as how to connect with them. And please, subscribe and rate Ask Me How I Know so it reaches other listeners like you. Until next time, go find your freedom.